Hello and welcome to our special live streaming series, COVID-19 Frontline on CGTN. I'm Zhou Yun. COVID-19 Frontline, the special live streaming for medical experts from China around the world to share their thoughts as well as experiences in fighting and containing COVID-19. And apart from expert discussions, we also take questions and comments from our followers on various social platforms such as CGTN app, official accounts on like Twitter, YouTube, Weibo, and more. And also today, we're going to also take comments from Yang Shipin as well as Douyin. So when you do leave the comments and questions, do remember to use the hashtag of my opinion on COVID-19. We really look forward to hearing from you. 大家好，欢迎收看全球疫情会诊室的直播，我是邹韵。那今天呢，我们的节目的形式会跟以往稍微的有所不同，因为今天我们不再是邀请多国的医学专家去交流和分享他们在这个一线战役的一些感受，还有一些救治方案。那今天呢，我们是邀请到了一位特别的，同时也是重量级的嘉宾，他就是武汉金坛医院的院长张定宇先生。张院长您好，感谢您接受我们的采访。
你好，大家好，我非常乐意参加这个活动。
So today, it's really special and a little bit different from our previous ones because today we're not going to have so many experts from different countries to share their experiences and thoughts on fighting and also treating patients with COVID-19. But today we only have one distinguished and very special guest to share his stories as well as experiences on the front line of fighting the pandemic. And he is Mr. Zhang Dingyu, or Dr. Zhang Dingyu. He's actually the president of Wuhan Jinyintan Hospital, which was one of the designated hospitals in Wuhan for treating patients infected with COVID-19. So today it's really our great pleasure to have him because in China here, so many netizens from China usually call him a Superman for his role in the fight against, in this battle against COVID-19. So 张院长再一次欢迎您加入到我们的直播。我们知道昨天是4月26号，我们也看到武汉在院的这个新冠肺炎的患者是清零，这可以说是一个崭新的一个标志性的节点。所以您当时在看到这个消息的时候，是不是会觉得特别开心呢？
是的，我们非常高兴能够有那么一个亲临的这个时刻，因为我们同事和我们的病人都是一样的高兴。
Me and my colleagues, we were very happy.
我们也听说现在金银潭医院是在进行初步的一个消毒，还有杀菌。那接下来医院还有哪些措施的计划来去逐步的、快速的恢复到一个相对正常的一个接诊的这样的运行当中？
Well, at present, we're doing the following. One, you have already mentioned. We have some disinfection going on. We have covered 3 buildings already. And disinfection already completed in 1 building. We are currently doing disinfection on another building. We are now conducting thorough disinfection on a couple of buildings. We are also covering the air conditioning system, and we are also resuming the normal shifts of our staff.
Talking about the shifts of the nurses and the medics, so does it mean that you can take a break? During the epidemic, you have said that you hope that later you could drive around with your family.
Well, I haven't achieved that aspiration, and because my friends and all those nurses, they are working in different shifts. A lot of the doctors, in particular those young doctors, they are young parents. And during the epidemic, they haven't gone back to their homes, and we were very grateful to their support during the epidemic. And we don't want them to go back home because we try to avoid further infection within their homes. So we give them a 14-day quarantine so that they can do some nucleic acid tests so that they can also calm down and just relax and have a reflection of our fight over the past 4 months.
Talking about today, several months ago, in January, you have accepted a first batch of pneumonia patients with unknown reasons. So 4 months later until today, what is your feeling looking back?
So looking back, we are very relieved at this point of time. We still have some pressure, but if we look back, at the very time, we just followed the step one after another, but we never thought that this could be so arduous and so challenging. And we never thought that we would meet up so many challenges and go through so much pressure. And we only did what we were supposed to do. And so we were very lucky to be able to complete the task successfully. So we are very grateful to our colleagues and also to the medical workers who came to Hubei from all around the country.
You have mentioned that you have never expected such severity of the case and all those difficulties. But looking back, at the very beginning that you have discovered the symptoms of the outbreak of the epidemic, you have taken a lot of preventive measures. You have proposed a level 2 prevention measures, and also you have proposed to use the negative pressure ambulances. Why this high-level vigilance? Does it come from your professional habit, or you have some other considerations that made you think that it's not a simple outbreak?
So we were actually doing level 3 prevention. But this level 3 prevention was different from, was exactly featuring the same PPE, and we were wearing those protective masks. But this is the standard practice in our hospital. Each and every year, we conduct a lot of such practices, transferring patients at level 3 prevention. And just last year, 2019, we transferred some hospital under level 3 prevention. And last year, prior to the World Military Games, we conducted a training. And a huge part of that training was about level 3 prevention, about the transfer of patients. So we were very familiar with the processes and with the staffing. So that's why we were very prepared. If we push further earlier in 2017, when we were transferring patients of H7, A9, we were under level 3 prevention. But at that time, the influence was not that so significant. And it may look very strange, but for colleagues at our hospital, it's just standard practice. The standard practice tells us that this is a infectious disease, and on December 27th, we knew that this is a coronavirus infected pneumonia, and so it's infectious. So we have to protect our medical workers. So we require them to put on level 3 PPE when they were transferring patients.
Apart from all those measures you mentioned, like the level 3 prevention and also the negative pressure ambulances, very rapidly you have taken measures. You are half a beat in advance. You have mentioned that you have to use the alveolar lavage. Is it correct?
So we were very lucky that we made some preparation in advance. That includes alveolar wash, and we collected a lot of samples of alveolar wash, and that laid a solid foundation for our efforts going forward. I have repeated this many times. Had we not taken the alveolar wash samples, other medical doctors or the experts from the provincial level, municipal level, or from the national level, they would make the same requirements. And if they do that, we were in a very passive position, and that's also a waste of time. And with respect to the disinfection of the building, that is also a standard practice in our hospital because we are a hospital for infectious disease. Some of the disease may increase a certain period of time. For example, before the coronavirus, we had a lot of influenza among the children, so we made available some other wards so that we could treat other patients. And when we are treating people with coronavirus, we were actually adopting some standard practice as we deal with other infectious disease. So we had a very smooth adaptation. So at the very beginning, we do not think that it was a very difficult practice.
So it's not so difficult to make the choice, but it's hard to continue with those efforts. We know that at the very beginning, the full capacity is less than 700 hospital beds with your hospital, but at peak times, you can receive 840 patients. It doesn't mean that we will accept them by the entrance. This may also mean the risk of the increase of workload for our medics. So at the peak time with 840 patients, what is the workload with each medic?
So when the patient's number reached more than 800, we already had the support from medical doctors from elsewhere, from the municipal level, from the national level. So that was not the most difficult time. The most difficult time was before the Spring Festival. We had a lot of patients coming in, and at each room, we would have roughly 35 patients. But how many medical doctors we have? We only had 20 taking care of 35 patients. We had 15 or 16 nurses and 5 to 6 medical doctors in one department. And if we had such kind of configuration, and then that department would run very well. But because this is a new type of coronavirus, so this kind of configuration doesn't work. So that's why all the medical workers were under tremendous amount of pressure, and we were working extra hours. And so with the passage of time, with the development of the epidemic, we started to have more medical staff coming from other places, and then we had more resources, and we had 50, 80, and at some time even 100 doctors taking care of 35 patients. So we could offer more, much better services, and also our medical doctors, they can take some time to rest. So at that time, before the Spring Festival, we were taking care of 50 patients with maybe 20 doctors. So that was understaffed, and we were under a lot of pressure, but very luckily that period didn't last for very long. That was roughly 5 days to 1 week.
During that week, I suppose it has been very difficult because for your hospital of Jinyintan, I'm not from the medicine department, but I suppose you are a specialized hospital for infectious disease. You have also talked about the coronavirus, which is a quite new disease for all of us. We don't have so much knowledge about it. So for your doctors, the professionals for the infectious diseases, facing this new challenge and with such a workload, did you need a adaptation period?
Exactly, because from the very beginning, we were correctly informed by the authority, and we received the help from the national authority, and so we came up with a scheme, and we got through some trainings. Although we haven't seen, exactly the same type of coronavirus, but we know that this is a infectious disease and for various caused pneumonia for each and every year, we would encounter some cases. For example, the H7N9 pneumonia in 2017 was something similar. The only difference is the way how it get transmitted into a human body. So, but the principle that we adhere to was basically the same. So we conducted some new trainings and we worked out some new plans and schemes, but the general principles are the same. So our colleagues, we were very prepared against this kind of a pneumonia. We were experienced, and this is part of our job. So the gigantic amount of patients was something that we never expected.
At that moment, what is the most difficult moment? Is it before the arrival of the medics teams from other provinces? Or is it with the treatment of the patients? Or it is with the medical supplies like the protective glasses and protective gowns? What is the most challenging task?
The most difficult time was, as I have mentioned, prior to the Spring Festival, we were in a shortage of medical supplies, and every 20 medical doctors have to take care of 30 to 35 patients. Later, we had 80 doctors taking care of 35 patients, so that was a great relief. At the very beginning period of time, it was a huge challenge, and we could not take a rest. We cannot rest after our night shifts, and we have to travel into the ward, and we have to be in the room for 6 to 8 hours without coming out. That was a very big challenge from the very beginning, and then our challenge evolved to be something different. For some time, we had a shortage of medical supplies, and because our hospital is a professional hospital for infectious disease, we never ran out of our supplies because we have some inventory for at least 1 week at some of the departments. And at the worst time, we only had a supply of 1 day or 2 days. And our medical doctors, so they have to spend relatively longer time inside the room of the patients. Some of the doctors were even using diapers to avoid using too many PPEs. So it was very challenging for our colleagues at that time. And you can see that when they walk out from the isolation ward, you can see the mark on their face, and you can also see the sweat soaked in their PPE. And you can see a lot of these pictures at that period of time. And this was not a rare phenomenon. It was very common at the time amongst our colleagues.
Yes, it's very touching. I think that image has touched a lot of followers online. And one more question. You have mentioned that during that difficult time of medics supply, at some critical moment, you have only 1 day more of inventory. So at that moment, did you think that it's so hard that you cannot put through?
Well, our general feeling is that we were not as we were not in a pressure as dreadful as you might think, because the Health Commission of the Hubei province and also the Health Committee of Wuhan municipal government, they did a very good job in channeling those medical supplies to our hospital. So we could not say that the supply was very sufficient, but we managed to have very continuous supply. We had the worst plans. We planned for the worst, and if we were going to run out of supply, and then we can use those second-hand PPEs, and we have stock from 20 years ago, and we had outdated PPEs, and those was the inventory prepared for our hospital from many decades ago, and we need to wash them and disinfect them and then use them. And when we were studying at college, we were wearing this kind of PPEs to conduct our study and to go into a isolation ward. And so we planned for the worst, but we didn't actually execute the plan. We managed to have very continuous medical supply. So the PPE was not an issue, was not the most difficult issue we faced.
So one of the biggest difficulty, as I suppose, it may happen around January the 20th, because people didn't have so much knowledge about the coronavirus. So immediately, many safety guards and also the health workers in the hospital have quit their job. And at that moment, you are in the major battlefield for the coronavirus.
You are right. And this is something touched me greatly because we are all human beings. It's only normal for us to be panic. We do not throw criticisms to our janitors or to our security guards. And when they leave their post, we have to find someone else to put on a post. But our colleagues, they never hesitated to take up the post. So the security guards and janitors, those who left, they had their post refilled by other colleagues. And we have people at the logistic department, they were very fast in meeting that gap. And they went to the front line to deliver food to people under isolation, and they collected garbage and moved the garbage to a designated place. So we managed to have sufficient amount of staff to guarantee that the logistic work is well underway. So our colleagues, in particular our logistics staff, they were very brave and they took the front line and they touched us with their great spirit of dedication. So we were very grateful to our medical colleagues and our logistic people.
Yes, exactly. And Mr. Zhang, you have mentioned that the epidemic is like a final exam. You have to get fully prepared before that. For a normal exam, you can always have time to get yourself prepared mentally and also physically. However, for such an outbreak of epidemic, you have never expected such. So we'd like to know that for your team and yourself, this time you have successfully completed your task without retreating from the battlefield. You have made so many progress. So what is your routine training of the medics?
So we designed some very good practices and processes, and we do a lot of trainings on those aspects. As I have mentioned, prior to this pandemic, we had the experience from H7N9, and we also had the training experience for the World Military Games, and we had a training for transferring patients for the World Military Games, and we conducted at least 10 such drills. It was in summer, and we prepared the smooth channels for patients transfer, and we had a very standard process to deal with this kind of issue. And when we have patients coming in, we have our security guards to prepare for the elevator, and so our security guards know that in this process, our patients, they cannot be stuck by the elevator. So we had a lot of practice even before that. So And also, during the transfer of patients, we have a disinfection process going along with the transfer of the patients. So this is also a normal and standard practice within our hospital. Secondly, for our doctors and nurses, on ordinary days, they conduct a lot of trainings and emergency drills. And because our task as a hospital is to meet the challenge when infectious disease comes. So each and every year we deal with a lot of such tasks. So our colleagues, they are prepared in this aspect, and within our hospital we have in place 10 contingency plans for different departments, for patients who are children as well as adults. So everybody was mentally prepared as well. So that's why we were very successful fighting this year's COVID-19. And we were just following our preset procedures. Now looking back, we don't see any fear. We only feel that we did the right thing. We followed our procedures. Yes, we were under a lot of work pressure, but at that time we were just following the steps and following the procedures and processes that we set at the hospital. It's not like looking back now, and we were under a lot of pressure, and we might make some mistakes at some of the links, but we didn't, and we had very good practice.
Talking about the assistance from the country level, around the eve of the Spring Festival, you've heard that many medical teams will come from other provinces to help your hospital. Did you feel very excited?
Well, it's not like that. It's not very excited a feeling. No one told us that there were medical staff from other places, and it's around 7 to 8 o'clock at the eve of the Spring Festival. We were informed that there is a team of 150 from the PLA who are doctors from the PLA, and they're gonna be stationed at your hospital the next morning. And so at that night, we have to book hotels for them. So we were a little bit pleased and satisfied or relieved to know that, but we weren't that excited. And then by 10 o'clock, we received the information that there is another team of 130 doctors from Shanghai, which is going to come to our rescue the next morning. So we were very much relieved after learning the information. We didn't learn any information in advance, and so we just pick up the information all of a sudden, and we were very excited to learn that.
After the arrival of the PLA medical team and that from Shanghai and other provinces, have you noticed an immediate improvement in the treatment?
Yes. The PLA medical team and the Shanghai medical assistance team, they immediately took over 2 of our departments. So because of that, we were able to put our staff to other departments and medical ward, and so our staffing pressure was released, and then we were helped by another 150 doctors at the ward treating critical and severe cases. And at that time, we had support from experts who are professional in treating people with severe and critical conditions. They go to every patient. They give us very professional medical advices. And after a certain period of time, by February, we had some new medical treatment. And then at that time, you saw the 5th and 6th and 7th version of the treatment protocol. And at that time, we had a totally different thinking and different protocol treating COVID-19. The most striking difference being the intubation. The intubation at an early stage laid the foundation for better treatment.
You have mentioned the fifth, sixth, and seventh version of the treatment protocols. And for the coronavirus, although it belongs to the big family, still the COVID-19 is a bit different from the coronavirus. So we have to gradually gain our knowledge about this new epidemic, this new virus, in order to have ourselves better prepared.
Yes, you put it very correct, because this is a new type of coronavirus disease. The National Health Commission attached great importance to the treatment protocol, and so that's why we managed to formulate a couple of protocols within such a short span of time. The first version came out roughly on January the 15th, and we had a national video conference for training, and then within a very short period of time, the protocol was updated with a purpose to spread some of the best practice and some of the best clinical practice. And we also summarized some of the experience and best practice to the clinical field. And at the very beginning, we did not have any nucleic test, and we had no antibody test. And so we were just updating our method, and whenever there is a new result of research. And so it's not like, we knew that we had to do a nucleic test from the very beginning. We didn't know that, and we got to know that because of the constantly updated protocol and because of our close collaboration with the National Health Commission.
Since when or since which version of the treatment protocol have you decided to combine the TCM with the Western medicine in the treatment of the patients?
So that was a decision we made from a very early date, and no matter it is the first version or the second version of the protocol, we mentioned that we have to embrace the combination of Chinese and Western medicine, because this is one of the characteristics of medicine here in China. Both types of medicine can play a significant part in treatment. And then the National Bureau of Traditional Chinese Medicine sent their medical experts to Wuhan, and then we further updated our treatment protocol, and it was more comprehensive, and it can provide more practical guidance for our clinical efforts. For example, at our hospital, we had the support from academician Wang Ruqi from the National Academy of Chinese Medicines. He personally takes care of our patients and prescribes some herbs and medical soups for our patients. And so then at our hospital, 90% of the patients use some sort of Chinese medicine.
Several days ago, we have interviewed academician Huang, and he has also shared with us the role played by TCM in the treatment of COVID-19 patients. And I think it's a very popular topic among the followers online. You are not a doctor for TCM, but according to your personal observation, could you please talk more about the role of the TCM according to its effective treatment? Because we are all curious about that.
Well, first, in a ward managed by academician Wang Ruqi, they were focusing on traditional Chinese medicine. And most of the patients were using his prescriptions of traditional Chinese medicine. But the diagnosis and medical observation, for these two aspects, we were relying on modern Western medicine. And for the other wards, we were also relying on Western medicine, but the Chinese medicine is able to help improve the immune system, so the two truly collaborate with one another, and we can feel that a lot of the patients, after taking Chinese medicine, they get their symptoms relieved and they get to recover better. So this is a practice that we have to continue with.
Mr. Zhang, we noticed that you look quite relaxed talking about this epidemic. However, you are under great pressure for your own personal conditions and for your workload. You haven't taken a good rest for many days, so you almost have no time for good sleep every day. It's a good challenge for someone who's in good health condition. However, we also know that by 2018, you have been diagnosed with ALS. So at the peak time, did you suffer?
实际上是最主要的呢，实际上整体的跟着我的状况还是可以。
So
最主要的呢，
I was basically maintaining a
所以呢
good
总的
health
会
status. I had some walking difficulties,
到了，特别是到
and
晚
in
上
particular
那个
at the evening,
冬天嘛，所以你
because it was winter,
腿呀就外
and you feel that it's very difficult to step your legs, and so that's why that I travel alone, so that I do not transmit this bad mentality to others.
那个时候到晚上大概10点、11点钟，在病房
And
或者在医院的院区里
at around 11 o'clock at the
实际上是
medical ward,
真是叫
it was truly difficult to move my steps, and maybe it could take 2 seconds for me to take one step, but very luckily
我们的同志呢给了我也很
I received a lot of support from my colleagues
因为大家知道
because
我有
everybody knew that I was suffering from ALS, and so when I'm climbing stairs, everybody was giving a helping hand, and I was very touched by their support, by the support from not just our colleagues and from the medical friends from all across the country, and there were even help from a lot of strangers, such as the delivery man. So I was very touched.
We also know that before the end of January, due to some reasons, you have disclosed your health conditions about the ALS to the colleagues. You haven't expected that before, but due to some reasons, you hope that the other medics would understand. You may have difficulty in paying them tribute and also paying the courtesy to them. And the colleagues, they are also caring much about your health.
最主要的呢还是因为我想呢，这生病呢应该还是一个很私人的一
Well,
件
I think this is a private matter,
更多的呢
and
是考虑到我们同事
I didn't disclose my health status because I was considering the sentiments and feelings of my colleagues, because we have been colleagues with each other for a very long period of time, and so in the morning it's relatively better, and when it reaches afternoon and the evening, I may slow down and I may have a slower pace, and everybody was thinking that this is a little bit strange, and some colleagues suggested that maybe they could have some expert to come and look at my situation, and I feel that I couldn't accompany those experts, and those are the times that I think that I should tell my colleagues about the ALS that I was having, and maybe telling them that can have a lot of understanding between colleagues.
We have also noticed that you received a lot of interviews before. Many people would say that you are highly efficient. You always want to complete your work in a short time. So how can I put it into question? Is there a relation between your health condition and your temper?
就是这个
Well, I have always been like this, and this is my personal style. And when I'm on something, I want efficiency. I want quick decision and very effective actions, because we are a professional hospital for infectious disease. And I'm serving as the president of the hospital because I'm the team leader, and I have to push the team forward and drive the team forward. And this is my personal feeling. And also, After I developed ALS, I became more ill-tempered, and I became more impatient. I want to seize every minute to bring about change to my hospital, and we actually had some changes, positive changes at my hospital, and that is why when the epidemic came, we were able to cope with this situation, and my personal development of the ALS actually helped us to better prepare for the disease and the pandemic, and so I actually have pushed things better.
After the disclosure of your health condition, your colleagues have more understandings for your health and they are more supportive.
So everybody was more understanding. Everybody suddenly become more understanding and more supportive. And so I'm also adjusting my style and my conditions. I hope that we can get along very well with my colleagues. I hope that we can take concerted efforts, take the same steps in doing our work.
We also noticed that on the 4th of February, you have had a high fever. At that moment, for ordinary people, they may wonder whether it's COVID-19 infection.
I was too scared because that was the morning of February the 5th, and I woke up at 4 o'clock. I had some fever, and my body even trembled, and then I took a temperature, and it was more than 38 degrees, and when I got up in the morning, it was close to 39 degrees, and I truly got very scary, and I thought this might be the end of my life. And but I wasn't scared of this disease because I was on many different tasks. This is the most crucial time. I don't want to slow the pace of the hospital at this very crucial time. So when we started our work in the morning at around 8:30, so I did a CT and I did a blood test, and I also did a nucleic test, and so I was just waiting in my room, self-isolating myself, and then the CT result is very pleasing, and I didn't have the coronavirus, so it was just a ordinary fever, and then at around 12 o'clock, the nucleic acid test shows that it was negative. So I was very pleased learning these results, and I quickly forgot these results, and I was very excited again and on my work, and I even forgot that I had a fever. And when I was summarizing my work memo, and I discovered this test.
So you were very lucky to not be infected by the COVID-19, but your wife became infected by the virus. So did you feel very sad for her?
Well, it was much earlier. It was around January the 19th that she were hospitalized. At that time, we didn't have much understanding, much knowledge about the coronavirus. At the time, we were very nervous. And when we stopped our work, this being nervous became even worse, and because you suddenly realize that your wife is in a hospital and you have to take a look at her, and you have this great inner fear. But she later told me that she never felt fearful, but I was very scared, and I couldn't afford losing her, and we have been together for many decades, and when I'm ill, I need her by my side, and I couldn't afford losing her, and that was what on my mind
You
at the time.
cannot avoid losing her. And that explains why you always look so optimistic after the outbreak of the epidemic. You have always been so active and optimistic in your work. Currently, we have only noticed one thing of you crying by the side of your wife. Maybe it's after witnessing what happened to the other patients, right?
Yes, I was scared, and she was scared too, and she was scared that I was scared that I may lose her, and there was this great inner fear, and I was driving, and this suddenly came to my mind, and I just shed out tears all of a sudden. It was a very bad feeling, and she herself doesn't know this, and don't want her know. I don't want her to know that I was suffering so much within me, and so when I saw her in the evening, and we basically gave each other a lot of comforts, and it was like hundreds of knives on your heart.
It's only a quick chat with your wife, but I can still tell from your facial expression that there are such strong ties linking you and your wife. So, under the peak of your pressure in the work, will you still keep in contact with your wife?
Yes, I talk to her quite often, and whenever I have some time, no matter how late it is, and if I could manage to go back home by 12, and then I would go back home. And if it's later than 12, I would spend some time talking to her, sharing my experience and my feelings with her, and so we give each other some comforts, and we do that to help us feel better. We seldom make video calls because when you are working in a hospital, you don't have this much time doing video calls.
And also, one lucky thing for your wife is that she is cured and discharged. You have also encouraged her to make a donation of the plasma.
Yes, we had this conversation at our home, and I told her that you are in a phase of recovery and your plasma is a very good option for those other patients. So I made this appeal publicly, and she learned that at home, and she said she volunteered to donate her plasma to the hospital, and she also convinced one of her friends, but the plasma of her friends was not qualified, so she just donated hers.
So, to be qualified for the donation, it means she's recovering very well.
Yes, she's under very good recovery.
And Mr. Zhang, we have noticed that you are a person with low profile. You have opened your Weibo account, but not updated for years. For a president of infectious disease hospital, usually you will not be exposed to the public opinion, but suddenly your story has been told on the internet. What's your word for them?
Well, so this kind of hospital doesn't deserve such high exposure, and when it is having very high exposure, it shows that our society is in a problem. For example, in 2017, we had the swine flu, and we had a larger exposure, but that was not a very good phenomenon. It's not a good thing. And if we remain invisible to the public eye, and then it shows that our society is running very well. It means that our life is very normal, and because infectious disease should not become the agenda of the society. now the top 10 ranking killers, infectious disease is ranking at the very bottom, and the number one killer is cardiovascular disease and cancer. So as a infectious disease hospital, we do not seek such great exposure, and we seek very low exposure, because the lower our exposure is, the safer the society is. And we as a hospital for infectious disease, we need to be the guardian of the society. And so whenever there is a pandemic, we must be able to act swiftly, just like in 2017, just like how we dealt with the swine flu in 2017. And so we quickly wiped out of the virus. This year, since the outbreak of the novel coronavirus, we were very responsive from the very beginning, and we were just gardening the city and safeguarding the population and the residents. And we have this great mission in our hearts. And we're not just doing a job. We're not just working as a doctor, and we are guardians of the society. And so that's why I often tell my colleagues at my hospital, we have to safeguard Wuhan and safeguard the population in Wuhan.
Right. Actually, this time our live stream program is broadcast through CGTN platform and other platforms. We will have an interaction with the followers online.
So now let's take a look at the big screen to see what kind of comments and questions have been left by our followers on various social platforms. 我们再来看第一个是来自这个新浪微博的网友，他是想问呢，比如说做一些正常的防护。
The first question is about with the normal protective measures like wearing the mask, wash your hands often, do not touch your face. Is it still possible for you to get infected?
Well, if you wear your mask and wash your hands often, and then the likelihood of getting infected is very low. And this also includes maintaining social distancing, and the likelihood is almost zero. The possibility of infection is almost zero, because with these protective measures, you are setting a protection layer at your face, at your hands, and you're also keeping a distance with others. You're maintaining social distancing, so there is no droplets from the air flowing into your nose. So if you're not polluted by the droplets, then the possibility of getting infected, I can tell you, it's almost zero.
Another question from our foreign follower.
Do you have special operating guidelines for pregnant women's medical staff? And the guidelines for older medical staff over 65. 这个是我们一位这个其他国家的正在看
This
直
is
播
a
的用户。
message left by one of our foreign follower.
怀孕的这个医疗工作者，然后还有一些，但可能这个情况在中国比较少。
He's asking about the operating guidelines for the pregnant women and also for the medic staff over 65. Could you please say something about that?
像我们这个妊娠的这些同志呢，妊娠的这些护士。
So we have a lot of doctors and nurses, and we do have some young mothers who are still breastfeeding their babies, and we have 9 of such nurses and doctors, and we try to avoid them from, we try to protect them from going into the isolation ward, and we try to keep them off the areas of risk so that we can give them the maximum protection. And we also learned some very tragic news. We had the colleague, we had the young mother who wants to continue with her work, and he stopped breastfeeding her baby. And her baby was only 4-5 months old, and we were very saddened learning this information, and so we had a conversation, and it was very heartbreaking, and we were sacrificing the baby, sacrificing her feed for the fight against COVID-19. Later, we learned that there were 8 mothers who were breastfeeding their babies, and so we tried to keep them off the areas of risks. And we also came up with the practice that before they cut off breastfeeding, and all the baby formula will be provided by the hospital.
So, in a word, for those medics that still need extra protective measures, whether they're pregnant women or the older staff, we will make sure that they can avoid as much as possible those dangerous areas.
Yes.
So let's get back to our interview, Mr. Zhang. We know that you are an expert of anesthetic. We call you President Zhang, but many people don't know that you have an experience of working as Doctor Without Borders. You have been the very first Doctor Without Borders from your province. Tell us something.
I'm the second doctor in China participating in the Doctors Without Borders campaign, and I'm also the first doctor with a background of anesthesia. And this experience is a very valuable one because in the profession of anesthesia, under all circumstances, it's a very rare and valuable asset. And so me participating in Doctors Without Borders is a very good experience for me. And I got to learn how we can do our best with limited medical resources and how we can deliver good and qualified medical services with limited resources. And there were a lot of medical principles from the organization which are worth of learning. For example, number 1, no harms. So as a medical staff, you cannot deliver further harms to the patients. And the second is, the simpler it is, the safer it is. And third, benefits for the majority of the people. Whatever medical practice you do, you have to deliver the maximum benefits to the population. The best for the most. So these principles have affected me profoundly, and they have deeply rooted in my practice as a doctor. So we have to use some simple and safe practice to protect our patients and to serve our patients. So my experience participating in Doctors Without Borders helped me learn some of their experience doing medical response and emergent response. There is some packages of actions to deal with emergencies, and this has laid a solid foundation for my job as a president of the hospital. So for this coronavirus, I also worked out the package so that I can scale up this package and use that in our medical efforts. So that was a very valuable experience from Doctors Without Borders.
In which country have you worked? In Pakistan?
Yes, I was in Pakistan. I worked in the northwestern province in Pakistan. It's called the Himagara.
And currently, Pakistan is also facing the threat of the COVID-19. As a Chinese doctor that has an experience of Doctor Without Borders, what are the suggestions will you provide to the people in Pakistan for their reference?
The most important thing is that you have to have in place sufficient PPEs. If not, you have to prepare some simple protective measures. For example, in Hindagara, it was not a rich area, and they have some big clothing and big dresses, and you can actually use those kind of clothing to cover your mouth and nose, and you can also wash your hands very often with soap. And this is also a very good protective measure. And publicity is also very important. Awareness is very important. You have to focus on hygiene. And when I was there, in my team, there was a post on hygiene promotion. And for the general public, the most important, I think, it is hygiene. And hygiene on your hands is very important. And this can deliver the maximum amount of help to the general public. I also advise people to avoid people gathering, because that was it was a Muslim country. A lot of people gather for some religious practices, and actually they can separate this kind of activities so as to reduce the chances of people gathering. And you can take a lot of measures to avoid infection. This is my advice to my colleagues in Pakistan. I have a lot of friends in Pakistan as well.
And Mr. Zhang, just now we have talked about Pakistan, and now let's look at the whole world. In many international opinions, they have witnessed China's quick action of containing this COVID-19 in such a short period of time. However, due to the differences of national conditions, many people, they still have some doubt for the measures taken by China and for the figures provided by China. So for you, who are living in Wuhan, where we have obtained a fast victory, what are your explanations for this victory?
So, very importantly, we took two measures. The first is the lockdown of the city. And the whole population in Wuhan made great sacrifice in this aspect. Another very important measure is the cabin hospitals. The cabin hospital is a very important, very effective measure treating COVID-19 patients. And after cabin hospital was established, the number of patients in severe and critical conditions dropped significantly. And at many different conditions, at many different occasions, I reiterate that this is an infectious disease, and your personal immune system plays a very important role. And if we could suffocate the disease, then the disease could become less severe. And before cabin hospital, our patients, they get nervous in their homes. They worry that they might evolve into critical or severe conditions. And they get nervous even when it is just a mild symptom, and they could have bad sleep because of that. This bad sleep also hurts your immune system. And when they get transferred in the cabin hospital, they get to know that there is a place to go, and they know that there is designated hospitals curing severe and critical symptoms. So at the cabin hospital, they could sleep better, and they could relax. And the sleep quality is very critical to the recovery of your immune system. So my personal understanding is that the cabin hospital played a very important role in helping end this campaign, this fight earlier. And because at my hospital, we also have a designated cabin hospital, and we take in patients with mild symptoms. And so at the point of closure of this hospital, we received no more than 100 patients with critical conditions. And so we only had maybe 20 to 30 patients who are in critical conditions. So my experience is that my observation is that cabin hospital delivers confidence and comfort to our patients.
And currently, some Western countries believe that China has hidden some key information in the very beginning of the outbreak. And you were among the first witness of this epidemic outbreak. And according to your personal experience, do you agree with those Western voices?
No one was covering anything up. No one was hiding anything. Because from the very beginning, the national authority and authority from the provincial level and municipal level, they attach great importance to this disease. Because this is a novel coronavirus, everybody had different understanding about the disease, and it's not possible for us to have a consolidated understanding about the disease from the very beginning. And for treatment of this disease, some believe that this is pneumonia caused by unknown reasons, and we had disagreements about what kind of patients should be included in this kind of treatment. And there were disagreements between different doctors, and it's only normal, and it takes time for doctors to reach an agreement. And at that time, there were really patients who suffer from pneumonia of other reasons, and so we made a distinction and separation between different types of pneumonia. And so later, when we had a treatment protocol, we were able to identify people with COVID-19. So it's a natural process of gaining knowledge about this novel coronavirus. There is no cover-up, there is no hiding any facts.
And based on the Chinese experience, our treatment protocols have been proved very effective. Do you agree?
And I was amazed at what achievements we managed to have. And it took only 10 days for us to separate the pathogen, and it's roughly 7 to 8 days. And we were able to separate the pathogen of COVID-19, and we identified that this is a new type of coronavirus, and you cannot describe this with any language, and it's super fast. And later, we found a lot of test kits, and we provided to the clinic, and we provided to the doctors for them to quickly identify this coronavirus. And it was super fast in terms of the discovery of the disease and the treatment of the disease and development of the test kits, and it's huge progress within a very short period of time. And we also shared our research result. For example, we immediately disclosed the genome sequence of coronavirus globally, so everybody can develop their own test kits. And we also publicized our protocol of treatment on a global stage, and we were in close exchanges with our counterparts in other countries. So for example, my hospital has conducted 2 exchanges with a hospital in Israel, and 1 exchange with the hospital in Canada and in Germany. So everybody was very concerned about how to protect ourselves and how to set the protocol and what are the effective treatment methods. So we are now ready to provide some help because we walked out first, and this helps the world to better solve the problem.
You have mentioned your international colleagues like in Canada and in Israel. In their opinion, Could they consider Chinese experience as a reference?
Yes, indeed. For example, Israel get in contact with us through their Ministry of Health, and because Israel had a city which is a sister city of Wuhan, and they submitted this suggestion and they submitted this request, and so we were maintaining very good exchanges with them. We also exchanged about protection, about processes, about how do we separate non-COVID-19 patients and COVID-19 patients, and we also exchange on the treatment plans and processes. And the process that I'm recommending is that you should use a plasma of patients who are recovering, and this is a very good practice.
At this moment, what are your biggest concerns about the epidemic?
So what I'm now focused on is asymptomatic patients. So these are not patients with symptoms, but they are carriers of the virus. And they themselves do not develop any symptoms, and maybe this is just a incubation period. But how do we distinguish a carrier or an incubation period? And this is a puzzle that we are faced with right now. And so we will have to have some collective management and maybe even isolation for asymptomatic cases, and this is a very necessary move at this point of time. And for Wuhan and for other places in the country, we are doing exactly the same thing, and we are doing nucleic acid tests for the whole population, and in particular for those who reopen their business operations. And it has to go to a larger population so that we can identify asymptomatic cases so that they can be put into isolation. After we can contain this type of cases, and then we will be able to dramatically relieve the tension with the passage of time. And later, on a later stage, we will be focused on vaccine development. And we have the vaccine of academician Chen Wei, and we also have vaccine from the Institute of Biology, and they are already at phase 1 clinical test, and the results so far has been very promising, and we hope that the vaccine can be further tested, and we hope that these two vaccines can help cure the disease.
When we are moving towards the end of our live stream program, we are happy to notice that you have been proposed to be the Deputy DG of the Hubei Health Commission. We know that at the very beginning, you were hesitating a little bit. Why is that?
Because I have been working at the grassroots level for a very long period of time. I do not have experience working in the government agency. And at the Provincial Health Commission level, and it's more about setting policies and making decisions. I'm a little bit strange to that field, and I have to go through a period of learning, and it's a new challenge. And I had a lot of respect for this new profession and new job, and I believe that it will better serve my job going forward.
After such an experience of fighting against the COVID-19, you must have a lot of conclusions and reflections. What do you think that those reflections will have an influence on your new position?
Well, I have to spend some time learning and familiarizing with the new position, and I will bring my questions and experience to the new position. I hope to spread my experience to my new colleagues, and I hope that that will benefit our health policies and decision making, and that will bring a lot of benefits to the policy making process of the agency.
Okay, that is the end of our interview. What do you want to add up?
Well, I'm very pleased to be involved in this very important fight. I hope that our colleagues, our people, and the people of the world can get over this difficulty as soon as possible so that we can get through this and get back to normal together. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your sharing today and also wish you good health. For China to have such a victory in this short period of time, many people are appreciating the efforts of China. But still, we have noticed that several countries, due to the national conditions differences, it's hard for them to believe immediately this big success of China. I think through today's interview with President Zhang, it can help us better understand that with such level of arrangement of resources and the national level assistance, we can win the battle against the COVID-19. Just now, President Zhang has said that he's just an ordinary doctor. However, I think with the synergy of all those so-called ordinary people working so hard at their positions and with a spirit of sacrifice, that we can finally have this extraordinary victory. Thank you again for your sharing, Mr. Zhang.
The achievements made by China in fighting the battle against COVID-19 has been applauded by so many people in different countries. But this kind of achievements has also been kind of hard to understand or even believe by some countries. And now I think the interview with Dr. Zhang today could really help us to understand the hardship, the devotion, the contribution, as well as this kind of sacrifices that what it took to make what we had today. And I think what Dr. Zhang shared with us and what has been done by him and so many numerous individuals in battle made us realize that it is only this kind of joint efforts made based on science can help us to win the battle of COVID-19 and for a shared future, especially a shared future for mankind needs the joint efforts from everyone to fight for it all together. So 再一次感谢张院长的分享以及您的解读 and thank you to our followers for your input and your contribution. We'll have more live streaming in the upcoming days. Thank you and stay tuned.
谢谢。